right, welcome into Big Hitters Only. It is Wednesday, March 25th at 9:55 a.m. We have Spenser Dalton on here, UNC walk-on. I'm Ross Martin, Big Hitters Only. If you're joining us for the first time, remember to rate, review, subscribe, follow, like on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, wherever you're listening to this podcast. Probably some new listeners today. Helps us. Just hit the like button, follow button, subscribe button. So you get all these UNC podcasts. We'll be doing a bunch of shows as we lead up to the new UNC basketball coach. All right, Spenser, news broke last night. I was in bed. I was like, I'm getting a good sleep. I had a big run planned on Wednesday. I was in bed. News broke. Checked my phone right before I went to sleep. Hundreds of texts, calls, tweets, work stuff. And Hubert Davis is out as UNC's head coach, 5-year tenure. Let's go actually get some numbers here before we hop in. 125 and 54 over 5 seasons. That's a 69.8% winning percentage. In conference, 68 and 30. That's a 69.4 winning percentage. 1 Final Four, 1 national championship game appearance, 2 Sweet 16s, and then 2 round of 64 exits. Did not go to the tournament in 23. Spenser, we've been texting, talking, all this stuff leading up to this decision. Your initial emotions, thoughts when you saw the news, kind of it became real for you.
Yeah. Some disbelief, some sadness, some inexplicable emotions. You know, your face gets hot and you're just thinking, oh my gosh, this is actually happening. I like, despite all of the lead up, knowing that the administration was in talks with Coach Davis and that this was probably coming, with all the reporting around it, Inside Carolina reporting that the future is in question, it still just felt kind of crazy and kind of surreal. I was in the bedroom myself and I got the notification and I just ran out into the kitchen. I was just I didn't even know what to do with myself. It just seemed just so wild. It made me think back a little bit to when Roy Williams retired. That morning, the basketball office sent out a notice to, if I remember correctly, all the former players saying press conference scheduled for this afternoon. I could probably pull up the email and see what it said, but you kind of immediately knew what it meant back then. But again, just a kind of wild 12, 14 hours here.
Yeah. I mean, the Roy Williams one was way more shocking because we knew this one was coming. We had been kind of ready to record this podcast Saturday. All right, this may happen Saturday, Sunday. And it kind of definitely was all right, it's happening Monday. Kind of heard that, and then it didn't come until Tuesday at 9 p.m. Let's look at when the email was actually sent. The email from Steve Kershner was sent at 9:01 p.m. Probably by design. Such a weird. Well, when's the best time to release it, right? Maybe at night. I don't know. Do you want the most people to see it or the least amount of people to see it? I don't know. Weird timing. You kind of mess up media by doing that. I don't know if that's a goal or not because you want. TV stations can't talk about it on their 6 o'clock news. People, whatever. That's not important, but it's kind of weird timing. Anyway, we knew this was coming, and despite the seemingly the delay for the news to break, it never seemed it was it never wavered. It seemed like everyone was thinking it was still going to happen despite some delays, despite Larry Brown using his PR team to put out a big thing in support of Hubert, a Justin Jackson tweet. There was all right, is there some momentum coming to save him? Did he make some power play? Did he rally enough support with former players and Hubert Davis supporters and Roy Williams to get another year? But in the back of my mind, I always thought that like it had to be done because the damage was already done with what happened the last 3 or 4 days. The donor support, the fact that he would be on the hottest of hot seats if he came back for the 26-27 season. There's this cloud over it. So once there was any rumors about him being done and that he was already going to be fired or he was going to resign, it just felt like it was a matter of time. And I don't think that the delay was anything crazy. Like, these things take time. You have the meetings. We both listened to the Carolina Insider, which brought on Steve Newmark and Bubba Cunningham with Jones Angell and Adam Lucas. And they kind of went through the timeline and the thought process. And it was respectful. And it's like, this is basketball. You know, I know it means a lot. It's very important to a lot of people.
Yeah.
But people also, it was like very serious and like very, obviously very serious. But it was just kind of an interesting setup. I don't even know where I'm going with this. But I thought it had to happen. And I thought because of how hot the seat was after the VCU game, that it was going to happen regardless of any support he got. I'm not sure the VCU game caused it. I think it was another data point. And I really think his press conference and trend of press conferences had an impact. It was an embarrassing press conference after the VCU game that did not make him look good. And he never... Look, dude, Hubert Davis is a great guy. Great person. He never did himself any favors by how he interacted with the local media and the media. And on these big-time press conferences, he never looked good. And I think that certainly was another data point. I don't know your thoughts on kind of the VCU game and why this decision happened and had to happen.
The VCU game is a pivotal data point in all of this for sure. It's a little bit different in football comparatively because you really only have 12 games a season. So you have a more limited set of data. And to the points that you've made, the coaching carousel turns over on the assistant side and everything. And so it's just kind of a different game. With this, though, and I'll say, as a comparison to football, I think one game kind of can really change the way a coach is viewed. In this situation for Hubert Davis in North Carolina basketball, this is maybe a little bit of an oversimplification, but I think the VCU game is kind of the straw that broke the camel's back. We've got 5 years of data about what these Hubert Davis teams look like. We've got 5 years of data of how games unfold. So specifically, bad first halves, comebacks in second halves that for the most part fall short. That was a consistency throughout every single season of Hubert Davis's tenure, with some consistency as well in good first halves, followed by meltdowns, breakdowns, losing leads in second halves. We saw that obviously against VCU. And so that VCU game was a microcosm. It was a summation. It was defining characteristic, unfortunately, of a lot of games over the past 5 years. And so, that trend, that consistent inconsistency was enough to sway the administration and ultimately big money decision makers. I think the money aspect here and the boosters and all of these folks in power at the Rams Club, folks that we see sitting on the front row behind, on the baseline, these big hitters that we talk about that have these kind of closed door conversations. That is a huge, huge aspect. And when you have a group of donors who have the power to publicly let it be known that they don't think people are going to give their money for another year of Hubert Davis Carolina basketball, that is a really daunting prospect, I think, for the administration.
Yeah.
We've heard time and time again. We've heard time and time again from Bubba, from Newmark, from Chancellor Roberts, from any talking head you can possibly imagine, that money runs the game these days. And so when you start to think oh man, our coffers are going to be a little drier than they were last year. That's a little scary.
Yeah. Um, I agree. The VCU was, I think you said it perfectly, a microcosm of the whole season. It's a bigger game. It's a more important game. The NCAA tournament games are how coaches get remembered. I think if he wins that game
Yep.
and makes it to Illinois, I think we're having a completely different conversation. Truly. Despite what I think. I think he might have his job if he had beat VCU and was competitive against Illinois. I don't know. But even like even a tight game that was a battle all the way through, and then they lost at the end, maybe different. But the 18 point, it's weird. Like you got a big lead, they looked awesome for 30 minutes, and then an 18 or 19 point comeback by VCU, and them really fumbling the ball literally in the closing minutes was a horrible bad look combined with the press conference. I think it was too much, and I think a lot of people have their decision, their mind made up on Hubert entering this season, coming off the West Coast run, coming off the loss to SMU, the loss to Duke and Clemson back to back to close the season in the ACC tournament, and the season finale in Cameron. I think a lot of people had their decision made on Hubert, so the VCU game cemented that and gave them another data point and another argument to sway those who thought Hubert should return. And if you look, let's just kind of look at some things now. First season, look, everybody's like first season was national championship game in the Brady Manick season. Caleb Love and RJ Davis and Armando Bacot. The team wasn't that great until it was, when they really leaned on Brady Manick and Caleb Love kind of went off, and the metrics represent that. Then they got hot, and it was a really good year, and they closed it out great. Then they just were preseason number 1 in 22-23 and didn't make the tournament. 20-13. 11-9 in conference with a really veteran roster. It was Pete Nance here, I believe, right?
Yeah.
It was RJ Davis, Caleb Love, Leaky Black, Pete Nance,
Armando
Bacot. They declined an IT invitation. I think that was the same year that they had who's the Vandy guy right now, the white guy from Virginia.
Oh, Tyler Nickel.
Tyler Nickel. He had some guys leave after that, and then 23-24 was with Cormac Ryan and Harrison Ingram, and you still had RJ Davis and Caleb Love. And number 1 seed, won the ACC regular season, big win at Duke, Sweet 16, lost to Alabama, really good team. 24-25, first round exit, number 11 seed, got past San Diego State and lost to Ole Miss in the first round. Okay, that was bad. And this season, 24-9, number 4 seed in the ACC tournament, number 6 seed in the tournament, and a first-round exit to VCU. So those are all the data points. And it just like those endings, those seeds, those finishes in the ACC are not enough. And I think the standard of UNC, which we talked about for so long, is much better than that. Despite Hubert Davis being a great guy, the results on the court didn't live up to the standard, and I think people were kind of saw enough and kind of saw his ceiling, and he also compared to Roy Williams. I think it's tough to follow a legend. You see it all across sports.
Absolutely.
It's tough to follow a legend. Exactly. And what's going over at Duke with them having great success with John Shire following Coach K, that does not help. And I think it's a great time to look for a coach. There's a lot of good young coaches out there, young enough coaches that can fill his spot. I don't know. Give me a little Hubert Davis obit on kind of his tenure. You're looking at it from a 1,000-foot view over the last 5 seasons, of anything you want to say about how his team's looked and the data points you consider when you look at the season, his career.
Sure. So again, I feel it bears mentioning. Hubert Davis has done an immense amount for me personally. He was the head coach of the JV team when I played on it for 2 years. I felt that he and I had such a wonderful personal relationship. I was like a little bit of a 3-point shooter. He was a 3-point shooter, so there's a small kinship there, I guess. And so he was actually the one who called me to kind of break break the news to me that I was out of consideration to make the team my junior year, and then to tell me I was back under consideration to make the team, and then Coach Williams ultimately broke the news that I got pulled up in the middle of the season, but it was Coach Davis who said, "Hey, we need you to come back in today." So, again,
Why did you get pulled back? Why did you get pulled up?
So I got pulled up like right after Christmas, my junior year. Theo Pinson was hurt. Nate Britt was hurt. Sasha Seymour, who was another walk-on, had just torn his ACL. A couple of other guys had been hurt, so there was just a ton of injuries, and they were looking at only having like 9 or 10 guys for practice. So I would practice with them usually just the day before games for scout team, and then once the JV season wrapped up, like literally the next day, I went to practice, and Coach Williams said, "Hey, you're on the team for the rest of the season. You don't have to try out next year," and everything. So, but again, Hubert Davis was my primary point of communication. I still, to this day, have the voicemail that he left me in the summer that said, like, we're going to have practice in the summer. Some guys are invited, unfortunately or not. And, so I always keep that as a sort of memento. But yeah, I'm really sad about this because the same reasons that everybody else has said. This man is a super upstanding human being. He wants nothing but the best for people. And so we're really dealing with not just the end of Hubert Davis's tenure, but the potential end of this Carolina family being at the helm. In a perfect world, we retain some alumni, some former players on the staff, but who knows if whoever they bring in is gonna be amenable to that. But again, I think we're kind of dealing with the death of a lot more things than just Hubert Davis's tenure. And so back to the basketball aspects of it. These Hubert Davis teams never really had a super solid identity. I felt personally that it was a little strange. Sometimes he would say, "We want to play fast. We want to play fast." And then we're sitting there in the half court calling set after set after set after set. So there was like some inconsistency in the messaging there. If you're going to play fast. You should have 90 possession games, scoring 90 points every single time. Should have 20 plus fast break points a game. And that wasn't always the case. So it was just, you heard sometimes some things that were different than what you saw on the court. Yeah. And, that identity changed a little bit. It's like, okay, well, we're going to go 5 out. And then we saw that 5 out wasn't really working. And so we have to recruit more size. And so, I think that's more adapting. I think that's recognizing that there's an issue and trying to address it. So no issues for me at all changing from year to year. Again, you have to the product on the court is reflective of what type of players you have. And so there was attempt to get different types of players year after year. So, that was a good thing. I think that was a positive, trying to address issues there in roster construction, but it just seemed that the mix was never quite right. That roster construction, it's like you got 3 or 4 good players, but you really need 6, and those 5th and 6th guys just weren't really hacking it. That sort of stuff. So you just saw enough inconsistency. Yeah, go ahead, Ross. Sorry.
Yeah, just to kind of break it up here. I agree. I think he became a head coach during the toughest time to adapt, and you had to change, and you had to be willing to change and change every year. The roster salaries jumped from not paying any players to getting NIL deals and trying to find big NIL deals to having a $14 million roster in the span of 5 years. And that's a change for anyone, especially someone like Hubert, who I think would be a much better coach in the 80s and 90s, where it's pure basketball, it's relationships with 3 and 4 year players. You recruit a player, You get to know his family. You probably know the player for 6 years. He played for you 4, and you're taking him to church. And I think that old school Dean Smith, Roy Williams, Hubert Davis, that fit what he believed in. And I think it was a challenge for him personally to have to go find a transfer, knowing that transfer's probably going to leave in 1 year, and have to deal with players leaving after 1 year because they didn't get enough playing time, or they saw more money somewhere else, and having to balance that. I mean, there's always this sense. I mean, I've been a fan of basketball for 35 years. You know, you're like, all right, that guy's a freshman. He's not playing very much. He's going to play more as a sophomore, and then his junior year is his breakout season, and then he's going to be a baller his senior season. Like you saw that with like a player like Joel Berry, for example, Peter Pinson, even like a guy like Justin Jackson, who got better and better, Armando Bacot. Just some of the, I mean, you could go back to like, any of these top players. Everybody got better, and that was awesome to see. And that fit more what Hubert Davis probably wanted to do. He probably hated this whole I know he hated this whole transfer thing and having to pay players, and it became a transactional thing. He always said he didn't want it to be transactional, and that's what it is. So he became a head coach at the worst possible time to fit, I think, what his ethos, and that sucks. Because I do think he's a great guy. You know, I don't think he's an awful coach either. I think a lot of people think he's some horrible coach. I think he
not
is
at all. Not at all.
Yeah, I think he's a above average coach. I think he's a solid coach. I mean, you could see some of the stuff. Sometimes his play calls are great. You saw him get super animated and pumped up on the sidelines, like fired up, like he was definitely engaged and passionate. I think there were just a lot of issues off the court, coaching staff, not getting up with the times in terms of analytics and video stuff. And we've talked about this in the past. Go back and listen to old episodes. I just think there needs to be a modernization of UNC basketball. And with that comes changes on staffs, behind the scenes, administration, money. People said he was never really a really good fundraiser and didn't like fundraising and didn't make those connections. That's tough. I mean, that is important. You're not just a head coach. I mean, basketball is not even like, it's a portion of your job. But player acquisition, fundraising, kissing babies, shaking hands, you're a face of a program, you're a face of a university. And I think his personality, despite what we saw on ESPN and even as a JV and assistant coach, his personality wasn't made to be the head coach for UNC. I've texted this to a lot of people. I think maybe he's just made to be a UNC assistant coach. You know, like, I mean, it's tough to say, but like the job was too big. I think the pressure got to him. You see him on the sideline over each year. The pressure got to him as a massive job. You see in the press conferences too, man. Like, he took losses tough, and he wasn't able to handle the immense pressure felt by these massive losses when it came down to the final seconds. It was tough to see. It was sad to see because he's a human being.
Absolutely.
A little rant here, but it's sad to see. It's sad to see the pressure get to him, but sometimes these jobs aren't for everyone. And I'm not sure this was the right fit for him. I hope he goes someplace. He says he wants to coach. Key part of his statement on Instagram was that he wants to go coach somewhere, which it was great to see. It's kind of surprised to see, but that's awesome, man. Go be a coach where you can get players to stay for 3 or 4 years and really be the role model, the mentor, the mission work you spoke about, where you can really impact lives and still coach ball. That might be, dude, what if Hubert's like a baller D3 coach or just a really low-level Division I coach where, I mean, I imagine he gets a decent D1 job somewhere, but like, he doesn't need money, you know, but where the transfer and the transactional stuff's not as important. I think that'd be cool to see. All right, real quick, Roback. I'm wearing the Roback hoodie. Check out Roback.com. I've been in there a lot recently looking at polo shirts, tons of polo shirts. Spencer and I have a big golf weekend coming up. It's spring. We're going to need some Q-zips this weekend, some hoodies, but definitely some polos. Check out Roback.com, promo code BigHitters20. Big Hitters 20 helps us do this podcast and pay Garrett and Connor behind the scenes. Connor's working. He's going to edit this podcast in like 30 minutes and get back to work. So we want to compensate Connor and Garrett behind the scenes. Big Hitters 20 on your first purchase at Roback.com. Get your brother, your dad, your grandfather, your husband, a polo shirt, a Q-zip, a vest from rowback.com. Check out there's tons of stuff on there. Big Hitters 20, Big Hitters 20, Big Hitters 20. All right, Spencer, let's turn the page. It's crazy. UNC will have a new coach here, and dude, could be 5 days, could be 10 days. We both watched that Carolina Insider podcast. I don't know if you took any notes on that. A couple things.
I did. Yeah.
Yeah. I'll go over. I mean, let's just go through it a little bit. This was Steve Newmark, the incoming athletic director, and Bubba Cunningham, the current athletic director, on the Carolina Insider podcast. It published this morning, so we got the first hit on it. Let's just go through it quickly. The timeline was after the VCU game. UNC came back on Friday. They didn't want to make a rash decision. On Saturday, Bubba met with Hubert to kind of test the waters, understand what he was thinking. Then Bubba and Steve Newmark met with Lee Roberts, UNC's chancellor, on Sunday after the women's game. And then Bubba talked to Hubert again about what they wanted to do and how to move forward. I imagine that meeting with Lee Roberts, they had kind of come to a decision about what was going to happen. And then Bubba was in there with Hubert trying to negotiate, see, how do you want to do this? Do you want to resign? How it's going to work? They met with the chancellor again on Tuesday afternoon. So that's yesterday afternoon. Decision was made, and the decision was conveyed to Hubert on Tuesday afternoon. Is that how kind of you took that? Any thoughts on that and how that timeline went? Kind of bizarre, but
yeah,
I mean, it's kind of the best way for it to happen, I imagine.
Yeah. So Steve Newmark said something that I thought to be kind of interesting, was that he felt that having him and Bubba together was a benefit to this process. They had the ability, again, in his words, to bounce things off each other and not have an overly emotional response. And from the outside looking in, I'd say that probably was a benefit. I think for a decision as big as this, you've got to have all the main stakeholders involved and on the same page. I'm really interested, and we'll never know this, I'm sure, about how that conversation went between Bubba and Newmark and Chancellor Roberts on Sunday or whenever it take place, and what transpired between Bubba and Coach Davis that maybe wasn't to Newmark and Roberts' liking. Maybe Bubba conveyed information from Coach Davis and Newmark and Roberts said that's not good enough. Or if it doesn't really matter, we've made our decision. We'll probably never know this, but just really interesting. Bubba Cunningham also said that the decision ultimately came down to, as well, is that the winning and losing wasn't as consistent as they hoped it would be. So, I think we really are seeing that this was a basketball decision. We're just not winning enough games. We're not winning. We're not doing well enough in the postseason. To some extent, who cares what it looks like? Wins and losses are what matters. And so, I think we can rest assured that they're telling us the truth. Again, I would never in a million years suspect, and I hate that I'm even saying this, like that there was anything on the non-basketball side that would influence this decision. We talked about the fundraising aspect of it, so that's an interesting data point. But again, I think we're seeing wins and losses be the primary and most influential factor in this decision.
And there's a lot that goes. I mean, player acquisition and roster construction goes into wins and losses, and I think we've both seen that there's been roster construction issues. One year the big men are great. One year the guards are great. They can't get on the same page. A couple of misses. Everybody's gonna have transfer portal misses. I think a $2 million miss on Kyan Evans is whose fault is that? Is that Hubert's fault, or is that the general manager's fault? The use of K. Tyson last year. I mean, there's just been some glaring transfer acquisitions where you're throwing money, you're burning money for no results, and that affects the wins and losses and the inconsistency. Go ahead.
If I can go back to one other thing too, very interesting to me that this sounds like a firing. It really does. It like hearing the words that Steve Newmark said, that ultimately the decision was conveyed to Coach Davis. That means that they just told him, and that was it.
So
and so I that's really interesting to me. I find it kind of difficult, Hubert absolutely would deserve a mutual, amicable split. Again, member of the Carolina family, ambassador for the university, the town of Chapel Hill. So many admirable personal qualities and connections to the program in the university that he would deserve every bit of respect that they could possibly give him. And with the decision being conveyed, as they said, it sounds like he wasn't on board with that. I'm reading between the lines a little bit. I'm speculating. I would prefer not to do that again just because of my personal connection, but that is what it sounds like, is that he wasn't on board with that. He wanted to keep coaching. He felt that he could do the job justice and stay another year and make things the way that they should be. And so, again, we're just in that kind of unfortunate situation that the administration didn't feel the same.
You saw his IG, right?
I did.
His IG post? Yeah. So
he said, I wanted to keep coaching here.
Exactly, yeah. So this is Hubert Davis on Instagram last night, put out by him or his team. Tonight, I was let go by the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill. I don't know why I had to add Chapel Hill there. My desire was to continue to coach here. This opportunity has truly been such a blessing. I thank Jesus literally every day for giving me the opportunity, relationships, and experiences with the kids and staff. He didn't use the Oxford comma there. I'm very proud of what we were able to accomplish together. My goal is to coach again in the near future. Yeah, so he was fired. And then Andrew Jones on Tar Heel 247 posted this tweet last night. Just to be clear, Davis was given a chance to resign and chose not to, so he was fired. We will have more on this on our board later tonight. We probably should talk about this at the beginning of the podcast anyway. So he was given a chance to resign. Dude, it doesn't matter. Like, if you're forcing a resignation, what's the difference? I think, right? I mean, I'm not in the corporate world, but all you're doing is, if you're making them fire you, you're going to get all your money, which is fine. Like, you're getting the 5.13 or whatever it was. He's owed his remaining contract, which is over $5 million. So I guess the resignation or the parting your ways looks good on the release by UNC and maybe saves him the word fired in his resume. But even if you're forced to resign, I don't see the difference. I don't know if you have any different thoughts on that. I mean,
yeah, functionally speaking, I think it doesn't. It all means the same thing, Yeah,
like,
he's not.
You're going to resign,
anymore.
or we're going to fire you. Like,
yeah. But I think it's just illustrative that there was an actual disagreement in what the move forward should be.
Correct.
Yeah. Coach Davis.
He wasn't like I get it. I'm gonna step down. I'm not doing a good job. He thought he was the man for the job. I'm not. You're gonna have to fire me. I'm not stepping down.
Yeah, and I don't think it was. I would never expect that it would be kind of combative or aggressive. Like, you guys are gonna have to fire me because I'm not doing it. The Jordan Belfort, Leonardo DiCaprio meme where he's in the thing. He said, "I'm not effing leaving." No way.
Yeah.
But again, just an interesting flavor of all of this. That he wanted to keep coaching.
Sucks.
Administration felt differently. Yeah, it just stinks. It just stinks.
I'll say this. Yeah, it sucks. You never want someone to lose their job. You don't take joy in that. I know we've talked a lot about that he's not the right person for the job. I have, and that he shouldn't be the UNC coach, but you don't take joy in that. And especially this is bigger in football because there's literally, football has like 100 staff members that have to find a new job or look to move and have to move their kids. But, there's going to be a different staff, and we mentioned this, but likely a lot of assistants will have to get jobs elsewhere. So you think of Sean May, who has a young family, who's been in Chapel Hill for 15 years now. And people like Brad Frederick, who knows? I mean, maybe Brett Frederick would be one guy who there's a chance that he would stay on. I have no idea. Jeff Lebo, Pat Sullivan, Marcus Page. I don't know. Let's just give our opinion here. If I was a incoming head coach for UNC, and I would want to bring in my best guys. I'd bring in my top assistant. I'd bring in my top analyst. I'd bring in, my another young assistant I've coached with before who's been in college for 10 years. I'd bring in an analyst who's been in college, but I would look to keep Marcus Page. And I would obviously want to keep Eric Hoots, who has a connection to all the alums, who's been doing this thing and knows where all the bodies are buried and has all the director of operations. And I would look to keep Jonas, because Jonas is a strength and conditioning coach. He has connections with all the alums, too, that have worked with Roy Williams. I think he was Roy Williams' strength and conditioning coach for all but the first year. And look, Marvin Williams doesn't donate a lot of money, but he did donate to the weight room. You think about that.
Yeah.
Like, people are tied to Jonas and to Hoots. I think those three people are the most likely. Now, I worry with Jonas because a lot of coaches like to bring in their own strength and conditioning coach. So that you see that in football all the time. No matter how good he is, people just have a relationship with their person. They've been working with him for the last 5-10 years. They want to bring in their own strength and coach. So I could see that being changed there, but I would expect Hoots to stay on. I have no clue. And I would think it'd be wise to keep Marcus on. And I don't know, if there was another assistant, it'd probably be Frederick. But at that point, you may be keeping too many people. All due respect, like, there's got to be some changes. You do want a clean cut. You don't want. There's a reason, you want some change. I mean, change can be a good thing. So, thoughts on that as a former player?
Yeah, absolutely. I feel I'm very conflicted about this because we're now facing the prospect of there not being a physical connection to the Carolina family if the folks that you've just mentioned, any of them, are no longer members of the staff. If whoever they hire next is, as we probably will see, they're not a member of the Carolina family. There's not a former player, there's not a member of the coaching tree at this point that is deserving of this job. And so, I think there's a very delicate balance here between finding the right guys and moving into the future, but also preserving that connection to history. I mean, we've talked about winning and losing being the most important thing, but I think there is a balance that can be found between keeping that connection. I mean, I think about this, and this is an emotional aspect of this, but, I got to hear stories about Dean Smith. I got to hear stories about Michael Jordan. I got to hear stories about Phil Ford and James Worthy. James Worthy, when we were playing in LA my junior year, he's an LA guy now. He played for the Lakers forever. He came and talked to us before, just like one day in the hotel. James Worthy. I mean, it was crazy.
Yeah,
like,
that's cool.
These historical figures that changed college basketball, that are, Kenny Smith. Like, we had this connection, and we got to hear these stories, these lore from the coaching staff, and those got passed down. It is truly, it's familial. You hear stories about your granddad because your dad tells you the stories about your granddad. Your granddad told you stories about his family. And so you have this literal family history built up that the blood of all of this runs through the halls of the Smith Center. And, we're very well maybe seeing the end of that. So in my opinion, I think you absolutely have to keep some of these guys on. You have to keep a Marcus Page. You have to keep Doug Halverson. You have to keep Jonas and everything. You have to keep the guys that you can keep, because, again, a wholesale cleaning of house, I think, would be a really wrong and detrimental move because, again, this Carolina family, it's important. It's powerful. you saw Matt Doherty get fired because the on-court product wasn't good, but I also heard that he was trying to change the way things were being done. And,
Yeah.
you try to change the way things are being done too quickly and too much too fast. And it's like, okay, now we're looking at donor money drying up. We're just looking at too much change too quickly and people lose support. Again, I'm not speculating that thing will happen, but it's just one of these possible scenarios that could, of the million different scenarios that could unfold. It's something that could happen.
Yeah, I mean, that's what you said is very important and powerful. And yeah, it's very cool to have a connection to the Carolina family and all these great players and great history. And you do want to keep that. I think some people would disagree. You do need in some aspects make some wide changes because you want the new ideas and the fresh idea. You don't want to have the same video department. Like, you need to bring in a whole new scouting analytics team and be like the old way. Whatever you're doing the old way wasn't working. So you need hey, we're gonna bring in a legit video team of outsiders, an analytics team that is going to revolutionize how Carolina basketball approaches scouting and in-game scouting and pre-game prep and post-game analysis. Like, I would hope that whatever staff comes in brings a modernization to how UNC prepares scouts players, scouts transfers, scouts the opponent, and prepares their team. And you would hope that the coach they find had like the Nate Oates, and how Duke does it with 10 managers and 5 scouts and all these. I hope we move forward and not stay the same on that aspect of it. But I agree completely. Like, I think there are a lot of aspects you could stay to keep that connection between the different eras and
you can modernize without turning your back on history.
Of course, yeah, and you want to make sure every player feels comfortable. You want to, whenever the new coach comes in, have some big weekend, some big dinner golf weekend where everybody comes in, everybody meets. You have all the big players come in, and everybody feels like they're still part of the family. I think that's important, and it's got to happen. You got to find a coach that wants to do that, that wants to embrace the tradition.
For sure.
All right, quickly, we got to get out of here. We have to start our day, start our work. But I really like Bubba. I know Bubba.
Me too.
I know him decently. I think he is a great AD. I think he's been kind of, what do you call it, handicapped by people making decisions for him because of the money and the influence, and he hasn't really been able to do a lot of things he wasn't able to hire some football coaches in the past. And the Hubert wasn't truly his decision. That was more of a Roy Williams donor thing. So I'm excited that hopefully that him and Steve Newmark, the new AD, will be able to make this decision on their own with influence from former Carolina family members and from the big donors. I agree that them working together, they seem like they work together well and like each other, and it's not like some power play. It's a transition. I think it was smart to give Steve 1 year to ease into the role because he's never been AD before. So what they said about looking for the new coach as we turn the page here on the podcast, and I hope to record a podcast today, tomorrow, or Thursday for a Thursday-Friday release that breaks down some of the top candidates, hopefully with someone outside of the Carolina media that knows these different candidates. So that would be a cool podcast. Obviously, I want the best candidate possible, competing for championships. I'm kind of quoting here, competing for championships on an annual basis. Hubert Davis in the last group was not consistent. So they want the consistency, someone who can build a culture, live within the Carolina community, understand history and tradition, and be a right fit for the university. UNC basketball is very unique. It's not like Clemson or Iowa State or like Virginia or Virginia Tech. Like, it's very unique in the demands and the pressure and how you have to work with the Carolina family, and the standards very different. They have to manage the financial component of the job. That's vague, but that includes a lot of aspects of the financial component of the job. Energize and engage the fan base. That also speaks to donor relations and raising money. Mm-hmm. There is no timeline for this hire. It makes sense. It could be a couple of days, he said, or it could be 10 days. I have no problem with that. The transfer portal opens April 7th. That's the day after the national championship game. You would like it sooner rather than later, but you want the right person. If that's Friday or if that's next Friday, I'm fine. Sweet 16's this weekend. Final Four is next weekend, the following weekend. Obviously, a lot of things are happening behind the scenes right now with the transfer portal, but it doesn't matter if you don't get the right coach and you don't wait for the right coach, then it doesn't matter. Like, you need the right guy before you focus on getting that one transfer. Transfer portal will be open for 2 weeks to enter, and then you can still have commitments after that. So you just need to have a plan in place in the next 10 days, I think. And then this was very important, Spencer. I'm not sure which one said this, but I think it's Bubba. He said, this is a very bright light. It's a highly successful program. It's nationally renowned. And so you have to be very comfortable in that environment. That was a key part. You can't just hire John Doe. It has to be someone who can handle the pressure of the bright lights of UNC basketball. And he said that's a very, very significant factor in their decision making.
Yeah, it sure is. It's a bright light for a lot of different reasons. It's a bright light because you have a rabid international fan base, certainly national. I mean, you go to Washington, you go to California, you go to Texas, you go to wherever. You got Carolina fans everywhere because people love MJ. People love the blue. People love the history. They love all of this stuff. So, again, you've just got this international brand because people love Carolina. And the expectations are incredibly high. It's like coaching football at Alabama. It's like who else? Like the expectations are high. We have made it publicly clear, competing for championships, winning postseason tournaments, competing on the national stage year in, year out is the standard. And so, again, you have to have someone who is comfortable doing that and living with getting hate on social media, living with these expectations, living with the weight of one of, if not the most historic programs in the history of the game. And so it certainly takes a certain personality, a certain type of person to do that. And, it's interesting thinking about the history. You've got Dean Smith who built that. His largesse was humongous. He was bigger than the sport. Roy Williams, very similar. These guys were public personalities, like shaking hands and kissing babies, like we said. These guys were important figures within the sport. We're not just talking about, are they good basketball coaches? These guys are important and defining personalities and coaches within the entire sport, within the entire athletic landscape. So again, to this point, you got to have somebody who's going to be comfortable doing that. And that list of people who are comfortable doing that is probably not very long. In reality, it's probably not.
And you would hope the coach that is comfortable doing that would want the job and want the pressure, and that's important too.
Absolutely.
Like, they may be at a good school, but they're not at the school in one of the top. I think UNC is a top 3 job. It's not in a place where if you can get it going, you can win big, you can win consistently, and you can be in these big time games against Duke every year and making Sweet 16, Elite 8, Final Four runs every year, and winning at a high level with all the support. And when UNC is rolling, it is incredible. And you want a coach who wants that and can feel like they can handle that. And you can win high at UNC better than you can win at a lot of other schools. And a lot of coaches see that, and they look, I'm comfortable at Iowa State, or I'm comfortable at Arizona or Michigan or Florida or whatever, but I can win more. I can have the opportunity to win more consistently at a higher level at UNC, and that should be the coach.
That's a great point. There's you've got everything working for you as the coach of Carolina basketball. Everyone is going to do every single thing within their power to make sure that you have everything you need to win basketball games and have this success at the national level. You don't necessarily have that at other places. You got TJ Otzelberger, for example, at Iowa State. He has support for sure, but he doesn't have the type of support from the fans, from the administration, from the financial perspective, from all these other things that he would have at Carolina. So it's like, hey, I know how to win basketball games, And now I'm going to get all this extra help. Why not? This sounds great. I can go be a legend, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. And another point is that I think UNC is kind of has been held back in their support. They're finally putting the money they need behind it. And if they modernize it and get everything they need and kind of get up to the 21st century, like they've been winning despite some of the true support they need. Like, imagine when they get the new Smith Center rolling and they have more money and everything's modernized and they have the advanced scouting and all the technology and start doing things like a 2026 college basketball program should. It would just be pouring gas on the fire. All right, we're going to get out of here. We're not going to do coaching candidates on this podcast. That's going to be the next podcast you listen to. But here are the ones that we've been talking about. This article I helped put together on CBS with Isaac Trotter, with help from everybody else at CBS. And these are the names I think everyone's talking about and listing. So I'm going to run through them real quick. So I want everybody listening to do their homework on these players. Brad Stevens already out. He already took his name out. Did you see that, Spencer?
Expected. Yes, expected.
Brad Stevens, I'm glad he did it. It kind of removes I would love him, but he already took his name out. So here are the names. They're not in order. Tommy Lloyd, age 51, Arizona head coach. Nate Oates, age 51, Alabama head coach. Both those coaches are still in the Sweet 16. Billy Donovan, Chicago Bulls head coach. When the Bulls play next, I'm sure you'll be asked about it after the game. Age 60, Billy Donovan. Todd Golden's the next name we have on here. He's 40 years old. I don't think UNC will call him. That is my opinion. I don't think he's a good fit. He's a great coach. Big buyout. I don't think culturally and morally, and I hate to say that, but I just don't think they're going to call him. That's my opinion. All right, Todd Golden, Florida coach. Not in the tournament anymore. TJ Otzelberger, Iowa State head coach, age 41. A reasonable buyout. Their team is still in the Sweet 16. Dusty May, Michigan head coach, age 41. Reasonable buyout. I mean, it's $7.5 million. It's a lot. That's my number one pick. That's my number one choice. You have to make Dusty May say no. You give him whatever he needs. You sell UNC. You sell the springs and falls. You get him out of Ann Arbor. It's miserable there in the winter. I've lived it. And that's my number one pick. And Grant McCaslin, Texas Tech head coach, age 49. He is out of the tournament. I think that's a good backup. Grant McCaslin, great coach, good backup. Not your number one pick. And Brad Stevens. Mark Byington, age 41, Vanderbilt head coach. He is not your number one pick. He is a good backup. He's done really well at multiple places. Georgia Southern, JMU, Vanderbilt, and he is from Virginia. He's coaching South Carolina. He's coaching Georgia. He's coaching Tennessee. He's coaching every state in our region except North Carolina. And I want to throw one name out there. Ben McCollum at Iowa. He's 45, reasonable buyout. He hasn't coached much in Power 5. This is his third year. He was at Drake. This is his first year at Iowa. I think he's a winner. I think someone like Kansas will get him. Another big-time school will get him. He's at Iowa. He's already has Iowa in the Sweet 16. I love Ben McCollum. I don't know if he'd leave the Midwest. I'm not sure he's ready to leave Iowa, but I think it wouldn't get the buzz of maybe a Tommy Lloyd or a Dusty May. But I think Ben McCollum is, if you want in-game good coach, Ben McCollum is someone you definitely recognize. That's a name that I just added to that list. Spencer, I don't really want your opinion on these yet. We'll talk this weekend. Really appreciate your time. I thought you handled the emotions of being a former player and having coached under Hubert Davis well while being still critical and reasonable. You did a good job, Spencer.
Thank you, Ross.
All right, man. We'll see you this weekend.
This was a fun one, man. Yeah.
Yeah, it was good. I thought we hit on a lot of good things. Big Hitters 20 on redback.com. Rate, review, subscribe, follow Apple, Spotify, YouTube. Really appreciate you listening. Get alerts to this podcast when they go live. We'll have a couple more coming in the next week or so. Appreciate it.